In 1948, an engineer built a headlight that steered into curves. The government killed it. In 1966, a team paired all-wheel drive with anti-lock brakes. Only 320 were sold. These engineers solved problems decades before anyone was ready, then watched their ideas vanish for 30, even 50 years before becoming standard. 10 iconic cars that arrived too early, and number 7 reveals exactly why being first almost never pays off. In 1948, Preston Tucker unveiled a sedan unlike anything Detroit had ever seen. The Tucker 48's most striking feature was a center-mounted Cyclops headlight that turned with the steering, lighting up corners before the driver reached them. This was not a gimmick. Tucker's goal was safety, safer night driving, a real answer to the dangers of dark, winding roads. But the law had other ideas. At the time, U.S. regulations only allowed 2 headlamps per car, one on each side. Tucker's adaptive light violated the rule, and state after state refused to register his cars. Only 51 Tuckers were built before legal battles and financial pressure forced the company to close. The Cyclops headlight vanished, but the idea of headlights that follow the road now lives on in modern adaptive LED systems from Audi and BMW. 7 years later, a very different vision of comfort arrived in France. The Citroën DS, revealed at the 1955 Paris Motor Show, stunned the world with its hydropneumatic suspension. Instead of steel springs, the DS floated on spheres filled with nitrogen and hydraulic fluid. The ride was smooth, self-leveling, and could be raised or lowered at the push of a lever. For drivers, it felt like gliding over the road, no matter the load, no matter the bumps. But the technology was far ahead of the service networks and mechanics of the era. The DS's complex system required specialized tools, and early models were plagued by leaks and breakdowns. Many owners found themselves stranded, unable to find anyone who could repair the car. Today, the same principles power the air suspensions in luxury SUVs and high-end sedans. Tucker and Citroën proved that safety and comfort could be engineered decades before most drivers or regulators were ready to accept them. In 1987, Honda's engineering team introduced a driving sensation that felt almost supernatural. The third-generation Prelude arrived with a mechanical four-wheel steering system, a world first in mass production. At low speeds, the rear wheels turned in the opposite direction from the front, shrinking the turning circle and making tight maneuvers effortless. On the highway, those same rear wheels steered in sync with the front, adding stability for lane changes and sweeping curves. The result was a car that could dart through city streets or carve a perfect arc at speed. Years before electronic rear steer systems would appear in luxury sedans and sports cars. But the innovation came at a price. The four-wheel steering system added weight, complexity, and cost, making it a tough sell in a segment where buyers were already wary of high-tech repairs. Honda's chassis engineers had solved the puzzle of agility, but the market was not quite ready to pay for it. 2 decades earlier, a small British company had tackled a different challenge: traction. The 1966 Jensen FF was the first production car to feature full-time all-wheel drive paired with an early form of anti-lock brakes. Developed in partnership with Ferguson Research, the FFF's viscous coupling split torque 37% to the front and 63% to the rear, keeping the car planted on wet or icy roads. The Dunlop Maxaret ABS system, borrowed from aircraft, pulsed the brakes to prevent skids long before most drivers had even heard of such technology. Yet the FFF was too complicated and expensive for its time. Only 320 units were built, each one a showcase of what was possible when engineers refused to accept the limits of the era. Today, four-wheel steering and all-wheel drive are celebrated features in high-performance and luxury cars, but their origins trace back to these early, misunderstood pioneers. As the countdown continues, the next car will show how digital electronics push the boundaries even further. In 1980, Aston Martin's Lagonda rolled into showrooms, looking like a spaceship from another world. Its dashboard, lit by bright red LED displays, and controlled by touch-sensitive panels, promised a future where dials and needles would be relics of the past. The electronics crew behind the Lagonda chased pure digital ambition, wiring together solid-state circuits at a time when most cars still use mechanical gauges. But reality hit hard. Early Lagondas spent more time in the shop than on the road. LED segments failed, touch membranes glitched, and heat from the V8 engine cooked fragile circuitry. By the end of its first year, only a handful of cars had working dashboards. For owners, the promise of the digital cockpit often meant driving blind or waiting weeks for replacement parts flown in from England. Today, digital clusters are everywhere, from entry-level hatchbacks to luxury sedans, but the Lagonda's electronics team paid the price for being first. 2 years earlier, a group of Swedish engineers at Saab took a different gamble, strapping a turbo to the humble Saab 99 Turbo. Turbos had a reputation for being temperamental, best left to racing or exotic sports cars. Saab's team wanted to prove a turbo could survive daily commutes, ice, and long winters. The result was the 1978 Saab 99 Turbo, a family car with a sudden rush of power once the boost kicked in. Drivers learned to live with the infamous turbo lag, waiting a heartbeat after pressing the pedal before the engine surged to life. Heat management was a constant battle. Turbochargers ran hot enough to fry oil and warp parts. Still, the experiment worked. The 99 Turbo convinced the world that forced induction could be reliable and practical. Today, nearly every automaker relies on turbocharging to boost efficiency and power, but in 1978, the idea seemed almost reckless. From LED displays to turbos, these cars forced the industry to confront the limits of electronics and powertrains. The next chapters will push even deeper into the age of electronic control, where software, sensors, and data would define the future of driving. In 1969, a team of German engineers at Bosch quietly rewrote the rules of engine control. Their Digitronic system, launched on the Volkswagen Type 3, used a web of sensors and a transistorized control unit to measure manifold pressure, air temperature, throttle position, and engine speed. Instead of relying on the guesswork of carburetors, the Digitronic injected fuel with electronic precision, responding in real time to every change under the hood. The heart of the system was a pressure sensor that constantly adjusted fuel delivery, aiming for efficiency and smooth running. But for most buyers, the promise of cleaner running and better mileage came at a cost. Early sensors were known to fail, and repairs required specialized knowledge that few mechanics possessed. Meanwhile, 2 decades earlier, in 1949, Oldsmobile's Rocket 88 had taken a different path. Its 303 cubic inch overhead valve V8 engine delivered brute force with high compression and simple, robust engineering. The Rocket's raw power dominated NASCAR, taking 6 of 8 major races that year and earning a reputation as the first muscle car. Electronics would eventually win out, but for years, mechanical muscle set the standard. Today, every modern car relies on electronic fuel injection, tracing its roots back to those early Bosch experiments, while the spirit of the Rocket 5.8 lives on in every performance engine. Next, the story turns from speed to survival as engineers tackle the challenge of protecting drivers from the dangers within the cabin. In 1994, Volvo's Safety Lab introduced a new kind of protection, the world's first production-side impact airbag fitted to the 850 sedan. The system relied on sensors that could detect a crash and trigger the airbag in less than 20 milliseconds, faster than the blink of an eye. When a side collision struck, a pyrotechnic charge inflated a bag between the door and the occupant's chest and pelvis, absorbing the force that would otherwise cause broken ribs or internal injuries. Volvo's engineers didn't just rely on theory, they tracked real-world crash data and injury scores, using metrics like the abbreviated injury scale to measure outcomes. Early studies showed a sharp drop in serious torso injuries for those protected by the new system. This wasn't just a marketing claim, regulators took notice, and soon the U.S. government updated its side impact standards under Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 214. By 2012, over 95% of new cars in America came standard with side airbags. What began as a Swedish experiment became an industry expectation, reshaping how the world thought about crash safety. In 1971, a group of Bendix engineers and Chrysler project leads took on one of the most urgent challenges in automotive safety, stopping a heavy luxury sedan without losing control. Their answer was the SureBrake system, an electronic anti-lock braking system offered as an option on the Chrysler Imperial. Using wheel speed sensors and an electro-hydraulic modulator, the system could sense when a front wheel was about to lock, and it could pulse the brake pressure up to 15 times per second. For the first time in a mass-produced American car, a driver could slam on the brakes and still steer around an obstacle. But the technology was raw. Early electronics struggled with heat and moisture, and the vacuum valves were delicate. Installation cost hundreds of dollars, far more than most buyers could justify. Fewer than 1,000 Imperials received the system, and complaints about reliability piled up. The option vanished after 2 years, and ABS would not return to mainstream American cars for another decade. Only in 2012 did U.S. law require electronic stability control, a system that quietly depends on ABS hardware in every car. What began as a fragile experiment now stands as the backbone of modern crash avoidance, but for Bendix and Chrysler, the future arrived long before the world was ready. Every feature we take for granted, ABS, airbags, and adaptive lighting, was once dismissed as too radical or too soon. Today, automakers race to innovate, but the gap between vision and acceptance remains. Progress demands risk. The boldest ideas rarely win first, but in time, they define the road ahead.